All right, welcome back. We're now up to chapter 5, and what we're going to do during this particular chapter is talk about organizing for security. And so we're going to look at different components and approaches to setting up a security organization and how you would plan and staff such a security organization. But before we get into that, what I'm going to also do is talk about the final exam, because you're getting to the point where you know enough where you can start preparing for that final exam and start looking at how you're going to submit that. So that's going to be the agenda for this particular chapter. We'll start off, like I said, looking at the final exam, make sure you're straight there, and then we'll start looking into the organizational approaches associated with that. So the remainder of this video is just going to look at the final exam. All right, so what do you need to know about the final exam? Well, first of all, it's an individual project. It is open book, open notes. It is closed collaboration. You're supposed to write this yourself. It is open web. You can go on the web and you can gather additional information, and I'm sure you'll use that. It's really going to consist of a security white paper. That white paper has 3 components associated with it. There's an executive summary. There's some supporting material with that executive summary, and then there's a decision brief in the form of a PowerPoint presentation. So that's generally what you need to do to build this document. So let me talk a little bit about what I expect to see within that 2-page executive summary. Then we'll talk about the supporting materials and then the PowerPoint presentation. So within that executive summary, you want to have each of these different components. So you want to start off with, and I'm serious about this, you want to start off with, this is the recommendation. Don't make me read the entire document to get to the recommendation. What we want you to do is put the recommendation as the absolute first part of the document. All right, and remember, this executive summary is going to be about 2 pages long. That executive summary, that recommendation component, is probably going to be a sentence. And so it's going to be some sentence such as, I recommend the adoption of McAfee as our antivirus solution within our corporation. That's an example of a recommendation. Okay. The background is probably going to be 1 or 2 paragraphs. It may be in total half a page, but even half a page is a little bit long, so a quarter to a half a page. And you're going to provide some background on really what is the issue, what problem are you trying to solve. So again, a quarter of a page, maybe a half of a page, but probably not too much more than that. Discussion. Discussion's where you're going to spend most of your time. Discussion's going to be a page to a page and a half of the entire document. You have that 2-page executive summary. During that discussion component, you want to list out different courses of action, and in listing out those different courses of action, these are like choices. So if your problem, let me give you an example, if your problem is to pick an antivirus solution, you may list out 5 or so different options. It could be McAfee, it could be Trend Micro, it could be Landesk, it could be Symantec. Those are all different choices or courses of action. All right, so within that course of action, this is just a bulleted list of the different options. It's not much more than that. In the criteria, you're going to list out how you're going to compare those different courses of action. So criteria might be the effectiveness of the antivirus as compared by external benchmarks. It might be the cost of the complete package. It may be the capabilities. There are lots of different criteria. When you're thinking about criteria, there are 2 general categories. One is called selection criteria, and selection criteria are going to be yes/no questions. It may be, let me use another example. If you're buying a car and you've set a price limit of $25,000 on the car, that's a selection criteria. It's a yes/no question. Does the car cost more than $25,000? And all of those courses of action that you identified above that are above $25,000 are eliminated by that selection criteria. The second type of criteria are called evaluation criteria, and evaluation criteria are things where more is better or less is better. So you may set up a evaluation criteria of gas efficiency. You know, how many miles per gallon do you get from the car where more is better? Some criteria like cost can be selection criteria and evaluation criteria. In other words, I'm not going to buy a car for more than $25,000, but less cost is better. The first is an example of a selection criteria. The latter is an example of an evaluation criteria. Finally, you're going to do an analysis. You're going to compare those different courses of action, and there are a lot of different ways to do this. You could build a little bit of a table with pluses and minuses associated with it, advantages, disadvantages. You could rate each of the criteria on a scale of 1 to 5 as compared to each other, or you could do a more mathematical approach, which is called a multi-attribute decision matrix. And you can look on the web, and there's lots of material around how to do a multi-attribute decision matrix. If you can add, multiply, divide, and subtract, you can do one. But those are the three common approaches associated with doing that actual analysis. So again, in this discussion component, you're going to take about a page of the document. This is where most of your grade is based. Courses of action are going to be a bulleted list, maybe with a little bit of definition. Criteria, another bulleted list with a little bit of criteria or a definition. And then that analysis, that comparison, is where you look at it. And I gave you 3 different techniques for potentially doing that analysis. Once you've completed that, you're going to go back and do a recommendation. That should be the same sentence that you used above, just copy it below. I recommend McAfee, if that's your choice. And then do a point of contact, who to contact to get additional information associated with this particular executive summary. Remember, it's 1 to 2 pages long, has to have each of these components. If you miss a component, I'm going to take points off. Don't do that. Include each of these components. Follow this outline. Don't be creative in creating a different outline. Just follow this one. Trust me, you'll get a better grade. Next, you're going to have something that's called supporting material. This is going to be 8 or so pages of additional material. And what you're trying to do is convince me that you know what you're talking about. That's really what you're trying to do. So I'm going to read the executive summary. And hopefully you've convinced me of your recommendation within that. If not, the supporting material is what I'm going to read. And you're just trying to convince me that you've properly researched everything that's in the executive summary and that you've got a good grasp on this, and life goes on. Now, given that I'm your instructor and I've got to read at least 10 pages on every student in the class, and I got lots and lots of students, you want to stick to 2 pages in the executive summary and 8 pages of supporting material. No more, no less. And you will be well served in this supporting material. And remember the goal. You're convincing me that you know what you're talking about. All right, that brings me down to the PowerPoint presentation. And within the PowerPoint presentation, each of these bullets is 1 or more slides. And in most cases, it's just 1 slide. So you're going to have a title slide. It's 1 slide. Lists the title of your presentation. You're going to have an agenda slide. It's going to be a bulleted slide that lists all of the different components of the presentation. You could almost copy and paste this slide, change a few things, and you've got an agenda slide. You're going to list the recommendation. That recommendation should be a single sentence, copy and pasted out of your executive summary. You're going to have one background slide. That one background slide is in a very short paragraph, probably 2 or 3 sentences tops. Cover the background of what issue you're trying to solve. Then move into courses of action. This should be a bulleted slide that lists the 4 or 5 different options that you have for solving a particular problem. You're then going to have another bulleted slide that is a criteria slide that lists the different evaluation and selection criteria that you're going to use to evaluate those courses of action. And then you move into the analysis. Now, up until this point, that criteria, course of action, background, recommendation, agenda, and title slide are all single slides. you can have 2 or 3 analysis slides, and that's where you're doing the comparison of the courses of action against the criteria. And by the end of that, it should be very clear why you're recommending one particular solution. You restate the recommendation. It's the exact same slide that you used up above. And then you have that's one slide, and then you have a last slide, which is a request for decision, because this is a decision brief. All right, I've covered the 3 components of your final exam. Those 3 components are an executive summary, 1 to 2 pages long, 8 or so pages of a supporting material, and then a PowerPoint presentation using the outline here. This concludes this video where we've talked about, hey, we're going into the Organization for Security Operations, and then I detoured a little bit to talk about the final exam. Woohoo! When you come back, and next video, we'll go back and look at the CNSS model again, and then we'll look at the objectives associated with organizing for security.